Welcome to the Financial Advisor Success Podcast, where you go behind the scenes with financial planner, speaker, and consultant Michael Kitces to hear stories of how leading financial advisors navigated the inevitable challenges that arise on the path to success, and get insight from leading industry consultants about how to break through to the next level in your advisory business. And now here's your host, Michael Kitces.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the 387th episode of the Financial Advisor Success Podcast. My guest on today's podcast is Jenny Martella. Jenny is a principal and wealth manager at Modera Wealth Management, an RIA based in Westwood, New Jersey, that oversees $12.5 billion in assets under management for approximately 4,700 client households. What's unique about Jenny, though, is how she and her previous business partner were so successful in the early years of growing their advisory firm that they decided not to hire up all the operations staff they would need to keep up, and instead chose to merge into Modera Wealth and become smaller partners in a much larger enterprise so that they could refocus their own strengths of serving clients rather than spending more and more time on operating the firm. In this episode, we talk in depth about how Jenny and her partner grew their firm from $19 million to $250 million in assets under management in just 7 years, thanks in large part to investing into a professionally designed website that highlighted their status as a woman-run, fee-only financial planning firm. How Jenny felt an increased burden of operational responsibilities from hiring to compliance as the firm grew and there were more and more clients to serve. And how Jenny's desire to get these operational monkeys off her back, as well as a lack of a viable internal successor, led Jenny and her partner to look to merge with a larger firm that would reduce all the operational burdens and ensure her clients would be served no matter what her own future career choices were. We also talk about how Jenny and her partner managed the merger process itself, including the way that Jenny first tried to merge with firms their own size and found that many of them wanted her firm to be their succession plan. The courtship process that Jenny and her partner decided to go through when merging with a much larger RIA like Modera Wealth instead, and how Jenny and her partner used the consulting firm FP Transitions to advise them both on their partnership agreement and the terms of the sale of their firm. And be certain to listen to the end, where Jenny shares the challenges she experienced going through a merger into a larger firm, including transitioning clients, learning new technology systems, and the loss of their prior brand identity and client acquisition pipelines that they already had. How Jenny carved out a new role for herself within Modera that not only ensured her clients would continue to be well served, but allowed her to the impact that she wanted to shape Modera as a whole. And how Jenny maintains a running list of quotes and scripts for herself that helps her to find the right words at the right time, or occasionally just some personal inspiration when communicating with clients. And so with that introduction, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Financial Advisor Success Podcast with Jenny Martella. Welcome, Jenny Martella, to the Financial Advisor Success Podcast.
Well, thank you, Michael. I couldn't be more excited to be here.
I really appreciate your willingness to join us today and talk about what to me is kind of a fascinating dynamic that shows up for some advisory firms, which is, what happens when we get the business going and it starts growing really well. There's a part of me that says, like, this is very, call it first world problems, right? Most advisors, when they get started, the struggle is it's not growing very well. I kind of wish there was more clients and revenue coming in. But sometimes we get started with businesses that grow well, and growth brings its own challenges, particularly when you get past just your individual capacity as an advisor. And suddenly now there's a team and there's more people and there's HR issues and there's operations issues and we need to make new technology decisions. And there's all this other stuff I got to do besides just getting and serving the clients that often I set out to do when I started an advisory firm. And I know you have lived a version of this path. And so I'm made some pretty big changes ultimately because of it. And so I'm just excited to talk about kind of what this looks like when the growth is going well, at least from the clients and revenue end, but then this business stuff besides the client starts getting really messy.
Yeah, well, thanks for that question. And, when I started out with Karen Keatley in a partnership, she had already started her firm known as Keatley Wealth Management. And we had a business plan together and we had a vision together of what we wanted to do. And honestly, it didn't require working too hard. To be honest, we really just wanted to have fun.
So when was this, when was all this getting underway originally?
This started when I finished my own CFP and took the exam in March of 12. I'd already scouted around town for where I wanted to land and what made the most sense. And I had a bunch of lunches with Karen. And she likes to joke that I hired myself, because I told her, I really think we could do this better together. And I really think you're who I want to do this with. And maybe that's one of the reasons that we did well, was because we liked each other very much. She had traits that I didn't have, and vice versa. And we knew that about each other, and we gave each other complete freedom to move into those worlds with the things we were good at. And we were just so complementary. And she promised me that the phone would ring, that I didn't have to act like a broker and start making calls and selling. Sure enough, that phone was ringing, and it, yeah,
Where
it
did
just
you
kept
come to the
going.
business from to be entering with Karen and doing these and lunches, trying to find opportunities?
Well, I had spent 8 years at home with my kids, and this is after a 15-year career in banking and commercial banking.
Okay.
And so, after my youngest started school, I decided that I really needed something more in my life. And
Okay.
so that I decided, looking around at different bank jobs, again, they just weren't floating my boat. I knew all those jobs, and I knew I didn't want to do them anymore. So I've always had an interest in this kind of thing,
Okay.
investing and planning for people and financial stuff. So I just thought, well, I'll just go sit for that CFP, thinking it was going to be easy, of course, and it was
Uh-huh.
a lot more than I envisioned. But I'm just so glad that, in hindsight, that I made that choice. And then, as I was going through the program and I was doing night classes, I just started scouting around town to see, how do people do this work. And I interviewed a lot of people for lunch, and just kept telling people, I'd love to have lunch with you and learn more about you. And
Let's say,
um,
how did you
yeah,
approach them? I mean, just literally, like, to get them to come out at lunch was as easy as just saying, like, I'd like to take you about to lunch and learn about your business.
this could seem kind of strange at first, I guess, to people, but that's how I go about stuff anyway. I like to learn first. And so I started with somebody that, my dad knew in the business, and he says, go interview this firm because I know this guy. And so they were so welcoming and so helpful to me, to help me understand the difference even between fee-based and fee only. I didn't even know that coming out of the program. And interestingly, as a mom, I'm going around town trying to say, well, I really need part-time work. And that became a barrier for me. I have a husband who was traveling and had a really big job, and I needed to be home for the kids in the afternoons or when they needed me. And I had some of the firms I really wanted to go with shutting the door and saying, we don't do part time here. And then one of those firms said, but you should go talk to Karen Keatley because she's doing things the way you want to do it, and she probably would take you part time. So that's kind of
Oh,
how I ended up
interesting.
having my first lunch with her.
So when you were doing this, like, were you interviewing, as in, like, you were finding firms that had job openings and then going to the interviews and interviewing for positions and finding out they didn't want someone part-time? Or is this like, no, you were just like reaching out to advisors on their own and saying, like, can I do an informational interview with you about you? Because I'm just trying to learn the business. Like, which
Yeah, it
version
was
of the
really
interview
the
are we
second
talking
of the
about?
two. Yeah, the
Okay.
second of the two, that I find that I do better when I just don't even look for a job opening. And I've done a lot of job hunting in the past. Believe me, as a banker, you get downsized all the time. So I got pretty good at it. So basically, what I do to move forward is I just start learning about firms and getting in front of people, and whether they have an opening wasn't my concern. And I would tell them that there might be an opening coming down the road, or you might know somebody that could help me.
So what
But
was
I
the
want to.
outreach just to create this? I mean, do you cold email them? Do you cold call them? Do you show up in their lobby and say, I want to
Yeah, I
do
know.
lunch?
It's awkward, isn't it? No, I would just cold call the firm and say, I'm interested in what you do over there, and I want to learn more. And I would even sit down with partners at large companies and say, is it possible that this person who runs this firm would have lunch with me? I want to learn more about what you do and how it gets done. And So I would get a lunch. And the funny thing is I have a story that I still tell about one of these partners who had obviously a lot of money. It was a big firm. And I had lunch with him, and I'm just a mom and, having my lunch, and he ordered a big lunch and I ordered my lunch, and I'm not really eating much because I'm just so interested in this conversation. But at the end, he expected me to pay the bill, and I did. I mean, I thought, how weird is that? You know?
So you find Karen. So what was like the size and state of the firm at the point that you met her?
So yeah, that's interesting. So the size of the firm, this is something Karen was essentially doing out of her house. It was something she wanted to do because her mom had become a widow at a rather young age, and she wanted a place. She didn't trust anybody. She knew the broker next door and said, that's not for me and it's not for my mom. And she had a background in finance. So she decided she would get her CFP in addition to her CFA and just do some fun stuff out of her house. And she started on an hourly basis, and her mom was her first client. And by the time I met her, she had moved to doing AUM, and kind of recently. And she had, 11 clients, and she had 19 million under management with those clients.
Okay.
So she was still really small.
Okay. So you're small, but like there's some real revenue there, like 19 million. There's some dollars there.
Yeah.
And good sized clients if it's 19 million with quote unquote only 11 clients. So,
yeah.
So when you said you're going to work together and we're like formulating this plan, it's just help us understand like what was the plan? Like what were the roles and responsibility? Like, who was going to do what in this coming together, Jenny plus Karen?
Right. Well, one of the things I knew was that I really wanted to do financial planning, and I wasn't that interested in the investment part. I was kind of worried about managing people's money, and that was the part I felt I wasn't good at, but Karen was. Being a CFA and having a background in institutional investing, she not only was she good at this, she was good at talking about it. She made me feel confident. So I knew that she would help our clients feel confident. And, but then at the flip side was she said, well, I really don't care about the planning stuff as much as you do. And so why don't you create, because I started looking at what she was doing and poking holes at it. And she said, well, why don't you just do what you want to do?
Uh-huh.
So I said, wow, really? And she said, yeah, pick out whatever software you like and decide how you want to deliver it, all of it.
Okay. And so that was kind of the division. She would do the investment stuff, you would do the planning stuff. So who was responsible for getting and managing the client relationships themselves?
We decided we would both be responsible for that. And of course, I was worried about it. Coming off of being a banker, I was used to, honestly, cold calling and selling, and that's what bankers do. So I was prepared to pick up the phone or do whatever I had to do to start getting ourselves out there. She said, you don't need to do that. The phone will ring, I promise. And it did. It really did. And I think we really got it going, though, when we built a website that would really help us drive business. And since my husband was in digital marketing, he knew a thing or two about how important this was going to be for us. So, but we did get a professional website company to help us with this. And I will say it was amazing, Michael. We really grew most of our business after the first year or two, mostly of our website. About 60% of it was coming from the website.
And who did you work with to make the website that was making all these things happen? Like, was it an industry website person or some local website designer?
It was a local person. And I think what we did was we just kept perusing the web ourselves to see what kind of websites do we like and how could we find out who did that one? We looked for smaller companies and companies similar to ours, same industry. And if we liked the website, we'd figure out, well, who was the person? And we settled on a company that was local to Charlotte, and I would say wasn't an enormous company. I think they were just the right size to help us. and yeah, really sat and listened to us in their office about what we envisioned, what we were good at. And honestly, they got really excited about building this because they were excited about us.
Do you recall who it was? Just like love giving folks like that a shout out.
Yeah, I think their name was Synchronicity.
Very cool. So what was the focus of the website? Did you have a particular specialization or angle or something that you were putting out there that was drawing and connecting in a lot of business?
Well, we decided that we wanted a homepage where people would land and see themselves there. So we built it with what we call client personas. Um, some of them were things like too busy professional, wants to retire or is retired. Suddenly single is another category. And people would see themselves there, land on their little box, click on it to learn more. And then we'd have videos of us talking about what we do with clients of that kind of client. So they would be kind of in the room with us, hearing from us. And another key component, I think, of that website was having Karen on the homepage in a video telling her why. Why did she form this business? Why did she form it in the way she did? And speaking of her mom as her first client. And again, it's like client is in the room with her. And by the time people would call me, and I would take most of those prospective client calls, but by the time they would call us, it's almost like they already knew us.
Mm-hmm. Because of all the video, because of all of
Yeah.
them, like hearing how you talked and how you communicated.
Right. So I didn't have a lot of education to even do by that first call. They knew we were fee only. They knew why that was important. Um, there were other things that prompted, and it was so interesting. But being women, and of course, we continued to build this practice and have to hire people because we grew quickly, pretty fast. And before we knew it, we had 5 women on our team. And if this doesn't get people's attention, having a team of 5 women on the website. We were getting attention from men and women. Then the men would call and say, they kind of whisper to me and say, well, I'm just thinking that women are going to do this really well. And so that was, well, I think we actually do. And then they'd say, others would call, because a lot of the men would call, and they would say, I want a place where my wife feels comfortable because I know she's probably going to outlive me. And I think might be the spot. So we got a lot of attention from just being women, I think.
So was there do you know what they were searching for to find their way to this website that was engaging them so well?
Well, something prompted the search for an advisor, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that would always be my first question. What's prompting this search for an advisor? What are you looking for? And see what came out. There weren't a lot of fee-only firms in Charlotte at the time. I think there still aren't that many, but there's more than there were then. And so, yeah, we used fee-only financial advisor. Financial planner was another one because we knew a lot of brokers weren't using that word.
Okay. So how did this show up from a growth perspective? Like how many clients were coming through from this? Are you getting like a client every month, which picks you up quickly when you're starting at 11? Are you getting like a client every week? Like how quickly did it start coming through?
Yeah, I feel like a client every month sounds right. And we started with this low minimum, about 500,000, I think was where we started. And then we had to keep picking it up because we rapidly got to the point where we're like, okay, we look at each other, we're growing faster than we imagined. Maybe we need to pick up the size. So then we go to 7, and just get to $1 million. But yeah, we developed a business plan, and then I was watching the business plan and where we were landing, and we were growing about 60% faster than that business plan.
So what was the original business plan projection? Do you recall, like, what were the milestones? What was it supposed to like be and grow to?
We started in 2012 together. We had projected about 350,000 of revenue by 2016, and that would be 4 years. But we ended that year with 550 in revenue and 100 million in AUM.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was so fast. We were getting even the attention of our custodian, Fidelity, who gave us an award. It was hilarious. And these glass things that were just so beautiful. And they loved us. They just were so infatuated with the clip at which we were growing, the fact that we were all women. We were getting a lot of attention even at our custodian.
So at what point did you have to start hiring that it wasn't manageable enough for you and Karen alone? Like, what was the first hire and when did it kick in?
Yeah, so our first hire was Amy Lauder, and she was our admin. We just needed somebody who could help us, with appointments, greeting people at the door. We ended up, first of all, we had to get a real office. I mean, that was progress, right? Which we did pretty quickly. We
Uh-huh.
did that in 2012, started working at that. So we got an office, and then soon after we got this office, we got Amy to help us, and she was fantastic. She was the person that would greet people at the door, but she has a huge personality, and people would immediately feel comfortable and engaged as soon as they met her. So she was, I would say the other piece of our success was hiring the right people. So yeah, she was the first one. And then I would say we were probably hiring another person each year. And the funny thing is, we would always ask ourselves, what do we want to do less of? And what do we want to do more of? And we give the less of to people we would hire, So maybe I needed somebody who would, or Karen really needed people more than I did. She needed somebody to start trading and somebody to manage the portfolio reporting stuff. And those are the things she wanted to do less of. And then I needed eventually somebody to help on the planning side. So, right. And it was so interesting because I think we were even getting interest from people who wanted to work for our firm because of the fact that we were women. We were getting a lot of women who would approach us. And so Erica Yunt was the next hire, and she was a CFA. And she basically sent her resume and, can you use a CFA? We said, absolutely. We need a person who can do the trading and some of the investing work to help Karen. And then, so then we hired Melissa Boyer to be our planning person, but she had to be recruited. So we used
Okay.
a recruiter to help with that.
And who did you work with on the recruiting side to find?
Well, it's interesting you asked because I remember that you had a company. I can't even remember the name of it.
New Planner Recruiting.
Yeah, I think we were using that.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if that was the actual recruiter that helped us land Melissa, but Melissa, she was working over at LPL, and she was not interacting directly with clients, but she had a lot of experience training people on planning software and knowing how to plan.
Okay.
And so that became key because she had also come from the insurance business. So I always say anybody who gets hired and knows more than we know about something is going to be really helpful.
So it sounds like it quickly becomes the five of you. I guess when did each of these hires come? Was it basically one a year? Like you're adding $100,000 of revenue every year and then you have to hire another person every year?
Amy came pretty early on, probably by the end of 2012. And then, we had some misfires too. We had somebody else we hired along the way from Vanguard who she just wasn't the right fit. And she was on the planning side, and when I was asking her to do things, I don't think she was really excited about the work. And so she ended up quitting. And that was really hard because that was a lot of training, a lot of my time working on plans and training her. And then that didn't work out. So that's why we hired Melissa. But I do think that Erica was our second hire after Amy, and she probably came in like maybe 2013 or 14. And then Melissa was, you're right, probably soon after 2014, 2015.
Okay. And all just framing from this phenomenon where you and Karen just kept saying, what do we need to do less of now? Okay, that's the next position. What we need to do less of now?
Yeah,
Okay,
kind of
what
if we were to offload something from our plate, what would we like to offload?
Very cool. So as this is building and growing, can I ask, what was the business arrangement between you and Karen as you had come together to create this? I mean, was this technically still her ownership of the business and you were a salaried employee? Did you like share in equity ownership more directly? Like, how did it work when you're coming and joining her in the business, but then you're joining forces and it's growing so much faster with the two of you?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. And one of my initial lunches to get to know Karen, she told me, "Well, I know one thing for sure. I will never have a partner, because partnerships are worse than marriage because the breakups are terrible." And she said that's just something I'm not interested in. So I don't know what made me ignore that, but I just plowed right in anyway. And we we just did so well together. And I think one of the things that was really important to this journey together was as we approached 2016 and we were 4 years in, and I basically said to her, I want to continue to help you with these things, but I can't do that when I'm not your partner. And to be honest with you, I feel that I've been acting like your partner for a long time. And she agreed. She said, you absolutely have been acting like you are as much of an owner in this company as I am because you're so passionate about our success. And I think that's really what won her over. And so she finally offered me that partnership in early 2017.
And so did you buy in at that point? Did you just sort of split what was there? Like, how do you navigate that when it's been growing for a few years already?
Yeah, we didn't even know how to go about this. I mean, this is again something we're not good at. I mean, we know what we're good at, but we have to get good at this now. How do we develop the legal infrastructure to be a
Hmm.
partnership and to get Karen what she wants and get me what I want and what I
Right.
need? And how do I buy it? How do I? So
Yeah.
we ended up engaging. I guess they're called FP transitions,
Okay. Yeah.
um, to help us with this, and they were really great. I mean, they helped us get that legal infrastructure and a lot of mentoring on how to do this and get everybody what we wanted so that we had the legal protection between us to make it work. And then the other thing that Karen was so generous in doing was she offered me a loan, a personal loan, um, so that I could buy, the piece that she was offering. So I would be obligated to pay her back. And we had a note between us. All of this starts with trust, right?
Hmm.
That has to be the basis of all of this. And I think we trusted each other so completely that we had each other's back that this really wasn't an issue. And honestly, I felt that it was so important that I landed with Karen as my person because I felt she really valued and respected me. And I don't know that that would have happened necessarily with everyone that I would have worked with. But like I said from the very beginning, she said, I want you to lead this effort. I want you to develop the financial planning style that you think is right for us. So that spoke volumes to me.
Just, I know this becomes a sensitive issue for some advisors on these paths. Did you have concerns that like you were buying into this thing that you had helped create to this point, and like it's more expensive now because I spent the past 3 or 4 years with you building it to this point? I mean, was that an issue or not a problem because you were still excited for what you were building going forward?
Yeah, I think that occurred to me, and I think it would to anyone. And at the same time, it wasn't lost on me that she took all the risk. She's the one
Mhm.
that bought the building that we were having our office in. She's the one that developed the business to begin with and how it was going to work. The AUM, the RIA, the AUM model that we worked in DFA, and she's the entrepreneur. She took all the risks. So I just kind of still focused on the positive that she was extending a partnership to me.
And then I'm presuming if FP Transitions was helping with some of the structuring of agreements, that they also did the valuation, and you
Yes.
could use their valuation and say, here's the number.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's so important, right? To get that right.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was expensive. And I think a lot of folks don't realize when they see partners who own businesses, that a lot of us have to buy that,
Mm-hmm.
that it's not just free.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so what happened next? Like you're early 2017 now. It's growing really well. You're north of $500,000 of revenue. There's 5 of you. So what happens next? What's the state of the business at this point?
Well, I'll tell you, in 2017, I think we were really starting to talk about we might need to do a partnership with another firm, just because I think with that growth comes responsibility, right? How are we going to continue? What does our future look like when we grow at this pace? And we were always very mindful, because we're planners, right? Of what that looks like for us. And like I said, I came in part-time initially. I was working 20-hour weeks. And I remember turning to Karen in the very beginning and saying, we're just going to have fun with this. This is going to be a neat hobby. You know,
Yeah.
we weren't really planning to work full-time plus. We loved the work, but we just kind of said, wow, what has just happened here? We have all this responsibility, and there's so much pressure and stress all of a sudden. And there's stuff that we have to be good at that we don't feel good at, right? Like human resources. I mean, that is a lot of pressure. How do we hire people? How do we have
Uh-huh.
benefits for them? How do we even interview people and not ask the wrong questions and get ourselves in legal trouble? I don't know anything about that stuff. So, and then of course there's compliance. That was the really scary thing. And I remember so much of this, we were trying to support each other. And when Karen would feel overly stressed, because of course this is mostly her company, and she said, I hate this stuff. And I'd say, well, what do you hate? Let me take it. Because I was her partner and I wanted to help, so I ended up being the director of HR and the chief compliance officer, and we were all wearing so many hats, and we felt like this is getting crazy pretty fast.
And was it viable to just say then we need to hire some more people to handle the HR and the compliance, and it's like keep doing what you were doing before, where you ask yourselves, what do we need to do less of, and hire a person to do that? Like what changed from that formula?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think when it came to the compliance, I remember telling her, I think we need more expertise here, and maybe we could farm that out, So we ended up finding a group of professionals that would come in and audit us, like do those mock audits to see where do we fit along all the compliance stuff we're supposed to be doing. And so, yeah, you can hire out that function and help yourself. But I'm still chief compliance officer. I'm still
Right.
responsible for all this. And um, we thought about, we could hire more people down the road. At the same time, we knew we're not getting any younger. And Karen and I, unfortunately, we're almost the same age. We're 2 years apart. So we've
And
got
you're
to think
both
about,
career changers, like have been doing it
yeah,
for a while. So this is not a 30-year window for you from here. You're already well
no,
into your career.
no, we were late in life career changers. And so we thought we really need to make a plan for our future so that we could eventually have freedom to do what we want to do with our life and the rest of our lives once we get older. And we were getting expensive for our internal people. And so we knew that's not going to work either, to just keep
One,
selling shares internally. We just kept scratching our heads and puzzling
one
because,
was anyone internally even able to take over and manage clients, like just to do what you and Karen were doing? Even
or
aside
were
from
they,
just the
yeah.
affordability, like could they even do it, or were they more support capacity folks? Wonderful support capacity, but like may not be able to run it on their own, even if they could afford it.
Yeah, I'm not sure the capability was there
Okay.
yet at the time. It would have been maybe if we kept working with that, with those folks and bringing them into meetings and all of that, they would have gotten there. I'm sure of it. We had really good people. Um,
But they
the
still may not
problem
have had
is,
the financial risk appetite for how valuable the business was getting.
I know. And then the other thing is, who wants to actually own it, run it? That's a career change in itself, isn't it, for those people?
Hmm.
Having that responsibility now go to them, the responsibility that we were thinking we didn't want forever, right? I mean, so we just started scratching our heads and thinking, what if we just merge with a company that's our size, and then maybe we could, or maybe just a little bit bigger, and then maybe we could kind of keep what we like, and it wouldn't have to be that big of a deal, you know?
So just
Um,
find a company to merge with that maybe has someone who, God bless, actually likes doing all the run the business stuff. Like, great news, we'll make you bigger. You can run more things. And then deal with
right.
all these things that we don't want to run anyways. Like everybody wins.
Well, guess what happened? You guessed it, Michael. We couldn't find a partner that wanted to keep the business, right? I mean, the more we were asking questions, the more we were realized they want us to be their succession plan. That we're going to keep working till we're 80, I guess. Um, and that
So,
responsibility thing.
so you went to shop for a succession plan and found people who wanted you to be their succession plan.
That's exactly what we were finding. Um, Everybody else was aging out too, and nobody had any answers. So, one of the firms that we were looking at, they were our what we called a sister firm. We loved them very much, and they helped us with our own model. And they were out of Middleburg, Virginia, and they had aging partners, same issues. And we realized very quickly we were going to be their succession plan. But not only that, they were in a different state, and this is kind of silly, but I think they ended up going to Buckingham. So
Interesting. So, so you're searching around uh, for some way to merge and not finding that mergers are viable because everyone around your size seems to be around your age or older and doesn't want to be your successor. They want you to be their successor,
that's
which
exactly right.
doesn't work. So what comes next? So like where do you go after that?
Yeah, so then I guess we realized we're going to have to look at some larger players out there, who have more infrastructure, more people, so that they can help us with this eventual problem of succession. And um, so I think we did consider Buckingham. Um, and then while we were looking at them, I think Karen knew some of the folks at Modera, from the NAPFA study groups and things. And she called Tom Orecchio and started conversations around that. I mean, this happened pretty early on, I would say, 2018, maybe even in that year, we were talking to Modera. Um, this took years, this plan. I mean, that's the messaging that really we were starting this process in 2017, started conversations with Modera in 18. And by 19, we were doing serious conversations with Modera and legal work to start to figure out how this would work. But that's what really brought us to Modera, was they were the size that was going to fit what we needed.
So what was their size, or at least at the time?
Yeah, well, at the time we merged with them, they were almost 3 billion AUM. They're 2.75, I think.
Okay.
And
And
that
and what
just
were
felt right.
you up to at that point? You were, I think you said you were crossing 100 million back in 2016 into 17. So what were you by 2019 when you're like doing legal work and queuing this up?
Oh, it is going to blow your mind, but we just kept continuing to grow like we knew it would happen. And by the time we merged with Modera at the end of 2019, we had reached 250 million AUM and
Wow.
over 100 client families.
Wow. So growth just continued on the same tear throughout. Were you
Yes.
still 5 people, or had you
Yes.
hired some additional?
No, we were still 5 people, and we always said that we were hiring for growth. So see, we were hiring early to get that 5th person
Okay.
to help me, because and this was what's great about being small, right? I could just turn to Karen and say, we need to hire ahead of what
Right.
we need. I need to be training people now to
Yeah.
help with what we're bringing in.
Wow.
And she would say, oh, that makes perfect sense. Let's do it. You just
So it
feel
got
so nimble,
very, very profitable as it went as well. I mean, if you were at, there were 5 of you in 2016 when you're at 100 million and 5 or 600,000 of revenue, then the firm like 2.5 X's. So I'm presuming you were $1 million to $1.5 million of revenue by the end, and
That's
it's
right.
the same 5 people.
That's right.
So the economics of the practice, I guess, got quite good even as you were queuing up for a sale transaction.
It literally blew our minds. It really did. And remember, we were also open to things that firms weren't open for me on, which was hiring people part-time.
Right.
We had 2 on our staff who were part-time all the way through. And we said, that's fine with us. We understand because we're all moms. We get it. And the other thing that was really interesting for our culture was when kids needed stuff, they were home sick, or we needed to pick up somebody for school, we had lots of flexibility because we all got that problem and we were supporting it.
So you go through this process. By the end, it's like, it's even with all the growth, like the Modera acquiring you was, I mean, they were 10x your size. Like they have presumably a lot of capacity to handle this, right? Very different than merging with someone that was similar to your size or slightly larger as you originally envisioned. Like this would be a much larger platform with a lot more resources.
Yeah, this was big time. This is big time. This was exactly, I think, what we needed at the time. And when I mentioned to Karen, I felt like this firm was large enough, but not so large that we couldn't have some influence and have some say in what the firm would grow to become. And I think that was what made it so exciting.
So I was going to ask, just, there's a little bit more these days than 2019, but even then there's so many firms out there that are expressing interest in growth and willingness to acquire. I've got to presume there were more other conversations going on with other firms beyond Modera and the firm in Middleburg.
Yeah, and I'm not sure back then if the mergers were in such a tear as they became later. I mean, we had to pursue. I don't know, and I wasn't party to all the conversations Karen was having with like FP transitions who continued to
Okay.
help us. And there were
But
definitely some ideas going on between them and
okay.
Karen that,
But
was
it wasn't today's environment where like people are calling every
no,
week that
no,
some
this got
firms get.
crazy
There's just
later.
like a
Yeah, we weren't part of the crazy, I
continuous
think. Mhm.
continuous flow. I'm Bob. I'm an associate with this PE firm. I'd love to learn more about your business.
Right. Yeah. So I think we were in the early days of the M&A stuff. In fact, we were in the early days for Modera. They started really doing the mergers, let's see, back in 2011, and they were on a one a year clip. So we were only the sixth merger. We're supposed to call
Okay.
them acquisitions, but we were the sixth acquisition for them. And I would say we were still pretty early on with Modera, considering the size we are now.
So what made Modera a yes or like ruled out other firms as no's? Like what were the the deal breakers and the big positives as you were evaluating the landscape and the options? Besides, we're looking for successors, we can't be yours.
I know. Well, what's so funny, Michael, is I felt like we were getting a lot of interest. People liked us because we were growing fast, obviously, and people were attracted to that. And so I felt like we were kind of dating, and so we we dated a lot of firms and kept talking to people. But then when we hit on Modera, I felt like, first of all, there were 9 owners at Modera at the time, and they were all men, and all male leadership team at the time. And so we really felt like it was really, we had some reservations about that. What was that going to be like for us? And we kept asking questions, but what we would get back was exactly what we wanted to see. They were so respectful of us and so interested in us, and that came through loud and clear. That I remember in one of the meetings with Tom Orecchio, who I don't know if you know, but he continues to be our CEO. And he looked at us and said, I want to be really clear with you all. We're not interested in you for your clients necessarily. We're interested in you for your talent. And you could have heard a pin drop. I mean, I will never forget that, because I thought, this is really interesting. They really want us.
So were there any surprises in going through the deal making transaction merger process as you went through this in 2019?
Yeah, I think the merger process is hard. It's a negotiation, isn't it? It's
Mm-hmm.
saying, this is what I want. This is what I think I'm going to be missing once I merge. How are we going to address that? Like, for example, we knew we were going to lose our brand, and maybe the phone would stop ringing. And yet we had to be okay with that. I mean, and this is something where some of the Modera partners just said, you have to consider that as part of the merger. What you give up is your brand. And
Well,
that's
and not,
hard.
I guess not even just the brand, but like the brand with this website you made that's working really well and driving a
Yep.
lot of business to you, because people are searching for, I guess, fee only planner in Charlotte and finding their way to you.
All of it. Yeah. And so it became this negotiation. So we kept floating around to the different offices to make sure we knew the key players and the people who that these are people we want to work with. And I remember being up in Boston at their office up there with Karen, and we were doing more planning, negotiating. Maybe this was in early 2019. I don't know, but and one of the partners, we were finishing up meetings, and Karen and I were waiting for Uber. And one of the partners said, if you'll just hold on for a minute, don't call your Uber yet. We were literally standing on the street. He says, I'm going to be right back. And he made us wait. And he came back with a box of chocolates for each of us. And the dating thing, the courtship, that's what's so funny, is I was totally smitten. by this company. These people were so respectful of us. They really wanted to be our partners. And so really what led us to Modera, I think more than anything else, was the people. We liked the people a lot.
So how did this work from I guess just a deal transaction end? Like, did they buy your shares and Karen's shares and you get a check and you're done? Did they like trade your stock for their stock and you become Modera shareholders instead? Like, how did the transaction work for you?
Yeah, we're all interested in saving taxes, number one, right? But also we were interested in being partners at Modera. So we did the share exchange, and Karen and I became partners at Modera. And in all of these negotiations, we got to ask for things. They got to ask for things. We wanted to make sure that we had a voice in the company. So we asked for leadership roles. Karen became the first woman to ever sit on their board. We, of course, were two of the first female owners. They had had one other owner before who had left to caretake for her family. But yeah, this was really exciting for us. And then she wanted to sit on their investment committee, and they said yes to that. And then I wanted to sit on the financial planning committee. So they said yes to that. So already when we're signing up for all of this, we knew we were going to have some influence, and that it could get pretty fun and exciting for us.
So what other kinds of asks did you and Karen have that were important to you in this process?
I think just sitting on those committees, we were pretty vocal about, these are some of the things that we're interested in seeing more of. Like, for example, we're obviously interested in their website, right? And we were looking at that and saying, we want to have some influence on that. And talked about some of the things that we wanted on the website, and they seemed open to it. And this is all, again, part of the negotiations, right? As you're going through things, you want to test people and see, are they open to some of these things, or are they shutting down? They have a saying at Modera that they told us about, which is, you will have a say, but you won't always get your way. And we loved that. So we understood that completely. And we said, well, as long as you're willing to take some of, because we told them how much business we were getting. And of course, they were interested in that. So we were talking about the website from the very beginning.
And so how did that land? You had this wonderfully successful website, albeit, branded under Keatley Wealth. So what happened to the website?
I know, so sad, right? Our primary business generation tool, it is really like the lights just go out instantly. So on January 1 of 2020, the day we became Modera, the website was shut down and never appeared again. But of course, if people were to search for Keatley Wealth Management, it would direct them to Modera. But yeah, the phone did stop ringing, and we had to then think about other ways to develop business.
How frustrating is it when your primary source of business development shuts down and it really does result in the phone not ringing anymore?
That was really heartbreaking, actually. At least I knew this is what was going to happen, that we weren't going to get that back. And
there wasn't a way to recreate it in Modera's website design, website framework. Like, there wasn't a way to try to bring the magic back.
Well, that's what you realize. It's a sacrifice, right, Michael? When you merge with a large company, you're not as nimble anymore, right?
Right.
So now the wheels are going to turn really slowly. This has to be done by committees and lots of thought and lots of um, it's going to take time. Everything takes a lot more time. And I think when you merge with a larger partner, patience becomes a virtue, right? You have to believe that you're going to be successful, even when it takes longer. And we knew, I guess, in our hearts that people were probably going to listen, that we'd probably bring this around to develop the branding that we thought was going to help to drive more business. And having these influential roles where Karen's sitting on the board, and eventually she developed an even greater leadership role at this company a couple years later, and so did I. we people were listening, and we finally got it done. I mean, if I'm very proud of the website that we have right now, it reflects a lot of what we wanted in the Keatley website.
So you eventually were able to rebuild the Modera website in the similar style.
Yes.
And so has it brought any of the magic back? Did it get things flowing again?
Not exactly. I mean, it definitely is bringing in more than when we started with this company. Okay. It's definitely bringing in a lot more business. And I would say it gets better every year. And we haven't gotten to, how Modera has grown on its own, which is really something. But
right.
As we get more partners that come in with, I like to call them partners, these are acquisitions, but we are on a tear. And as we get new talent in here, people have lots of great ideas. Right. So it wasn't just our ideas creating this website, it's everyone's ideas. And we hired a really good professional branding company. I mean, remember I told you we had a small website developer before. We didn't have a branding company. Right. This is a big deal. And now when we look at this website, it's really incredible how different it is now, and how, to me, it reflects something I'm really proud of.
Very cool. Very cool. So help us understand more what the, I guess, like, roles and responsibilities were supposed to become after you did this merger, because you had all these different hats that you were wearing. Karen had investments and a bunch of clients. You had planning and a bunch of clients. You also had, operations and HR and chief bottle washer and all the things that happens in small business environment as we're growing. So, like, how did the roles get redefined for you and I guess for Karen, to the extent that when you went through this transaction and into the new role?
Well, this is when it got really hard, because once you switch your lights off and you become Modera, first of all, we didn't really know anybody. We just knew some of the partners. And there was already another firm that had merged in and formed a Charlotte office across town. And we were just getting to know them. They were in a completely different office. And then wouldn't you know that it was 1/1/20 when we shut our lights off and became something else. And that was the beginnings of the pandemic. So how were we going to get to know these folks all over Modera? Because to me, making connections and building trust is the way we build success, right?
Yep.
To influence, to grow, to enjoy a new company. And we started out without even having the ability to see people in person. Pretty rapidly, we moved to home offices. It was really hard. So I think for any merger, this is the hardest phase of all, is that first 6 months to a year of shutting down what you love, right, and what you've built, and becoming something else, and deciding this is all that I'm going to have to sacrifice, and maybe I can move this big company in some of the directions want it to go if we continue to build trust and connection. But it starts with, you can't even keep your technology anymore, right?
Right.
You've got to rebuild everything. And you're bringing clients along. You've got to tell them and get their buy-in. And what was driving most of our discussions around succession and merging and all that was getting the right fit for our clients and getting the right plan for them. And so we had to tell them all. And so these are dark days, right? Where you're making these calls and telling clients, this is something we're trying to do to improve your journey, not just our journey,
Yeah. I
and
was going to ask,
give you a
how
plan.
did you explain it? I mean, just when you get to we're merging and have to tell all the clients that it's going to say Modera from now on. Like, how
Right.
did you actually communicate and message all this to clients?
It was really tough, Michael. I mean, this is one of the hardest things you have to do. And one thing I did know is we're not going to do this by way of a letter or an email. I wanted to call each client individually to give them a chance to share, how do they feel about this? And how can I help answer that? And I think they really appreciated that.
Because you were really concerned that they would be negative or not happy or not want to be part of this?
Oh, definitely. I don't think anybody likes change. It
That's
starts
fair.
with that. They want it to be the same. And of course, then they worried we're going to leave, right? So
Right.
we kept saying, things like, this is our responsibility. This is our duty, not just to help you plan for your future, but plan for your future with with a firm that'll help you indefinitely, beyond our lifetimes or whatever, and give you that longevity. We told them about how hard we worked to find the right culture and fit, that this essentially was the same as our firm, but just a lot bigger. They were the same investment philosophy, the same philosophy around working with clients and their dedication to that. One of the first fee-only firms in the business. Um, so we worked really hard at that, but we told them, what we desire from you is to feel nothing different, that you're just going to see a new name on the door. Right?
So, given that part of the driver of this was you and Karen wanted some level of succession plan and path to be able to exit, like what were your time horizons at this point? I mean, did this change or reset your time horizon? Because now you could get back to client stuff and not quite as buried in some of the other things that you weren't enjoying.
Yeah, and I think we didn't know. We just knew that we didn't want to do it forever. But I think as we got into Modera and got through some of the really tough stuff, we started to really enjoy it more. And then we ended up working longer maybe than, I know Karen has gone to a emeritus advisor role now. So she's not working as much in the company now. She's more effectively retired. And I'm still here. But we really enjoyed it, and I think keep enjoying this place. So, and it's what FP transitions told us would happen. They said frequently what we find is people, once they merge, they stay on longer than they thought.
Right.
They start to get the monkey off their back,
Uh-huh.
and then they enjoy what they've always wanted to do.
So, how did clients take the news? Did you have folks who left and didn't want to come along?
We maybe lost 2, but they were small. And of course, they're never fun to lose. And I remember running into Karen's office one day and going, I can't even believe we're losing this client. She says, tell me they're another small one. And she says, I think when you merge with a larger company, you're going to have larger companies, and the small ones are going to feel lost sometimes.
Because they're literally afraid now they're becoming a a small fish in a much bigger pond,
That's right.
which
That's right.
to be fair, probably is accurate.
Right. Right. But we still felt like we were giving them the same level of attention, but we
Right.
could not change how they felt about being
Right.
part of this enormous firm, which seemed enormous to them, right? Because as you said, it was 10 times the size.
Yeah.
So,
And did anything swing the other way? I mean, were there clients who, I don't know, brought more or referred more or were more engaged because you were part of a larger firm, or mostly just the concerns of who was going to leave because they didn't want to come along?
well, interestingly, as we started to make this thing, more public towards the end of 2019, we did land a really large client that I don't think we would have been able to if we didn't have the heft that we were looking for. And I think that continued, that we were able to get larger clients and saw that that wasn't even a thing. Whereas, we would always get these discussions with prospective clients who would say, well, what happens if one of you gets hit by the bus?
Yeah.
Where does that leave me? What's your succession plan? So we were always trying to answer that, and not too well.
Because you did have clients who were asking?
Yes.
Okay.
And we know we lost business because we weren't big enough. So frequently it was the larger deals, right?
Well, there's long been a pretty well documented phenomenon in the industry overall that larger advisory firms tend to attract larger clients. That there's a astonishingly direct correlation between the AUM of a firm and the average client of a firm, all the way from like firms that are less than 100 million to firms that have $1 billion to firms that have several billion. The larger the asset base, the larger the average client. It just seems to
Right.
be a
So,
thing.
but
Consumers seem to have this preference.
yeah. So in prospective clients meetings, it was interesting to see that turn, that wasn't
Yeah.
an issue anymore, that we weren't big enough, that we couldn't handle them. And so, yeah, we were getting larger clients and pretty easily.
So I'm presuming on the other end of this, like your equity shares roll into Modera, and like you simply have a salary for the work you do in the firm now. Like, was that the transition on the other end?
Yeah. So I have, we negotiated our salaries and negotiated more, and that was nice. And then we did our share exchange. And this was at the time where Modera, as I said, when we came in, was just under 3 billion. And so we got to be part of the ride after that, because now we're partners. And I asked to buy more shares of Modera at the time we came in, and negotiated for the same price that the other new partners were coming in for. And it was, Modera worked to help me finance that. So there were a lot of ways that they were helping us already personally. And so that was exciting, because I got in on Modera at fairly early, in their M&A work, I believe. And so did Karen. What we didn't know, Michael, was that the multiples for large companies are higher, right?
Right. So the firm got
So,
bigger and the multiples got better, which means the value did very, very well over the
oh
past
my gosh,
4 years.
we never saw that coming. Honestly, I had no idea.
What was leading you to want to buy more shares when you were coming in?
I don't know. I guess I really wanted to be a significant partner. And if it was offered to me, I thought, I want to take this. I knew how the share value at Keeley had grown.
Right.
And I thought, by the same token, they should grow at Modera. I didn't know it was going to grow this much with those kinds of multiples.
So what does it look like now? What's the size and scope of the firm today?
We're about 12.5 billion.
Okay. So roughly 4x in 4 years.
Yeah. So it's crazy, but Modera has been growing faster than Keeley grew. just through our M&A work and organic growth, about 35% per year.
Wow.
So it has been
So,
quite a journey.
and so help me understand, what does your actual role look like now, today, at this point? What are you still doing? What have you let go through this transition over the past 4 years since the deal closed?
Well, first of all, Karen and I ended up taking bigger roles, much, much bigger, I think, once we came in and we started to really connect with people and they started to value what we were bringing to the table. So Karen, she grew into an enormous role where she was essentially running and in charge of all of the wealth management and the investment management for the firm. So I'm like, what's
Wow.
left? I mean, you're essentially president, but I think her title was chief wealth officer or something, but she had a really big job. And then I became the person who was the lead advisor here in Charlotte. So we, like you said, Michael, not only did we not retire or back off the gas, but we just plugged right in and got going and really enjoyed these leadership roles. And since that time, of course, as I said, Karen has gone to mostly retirement, and I have also stopped leading the Charlotte office here. I've just given that to other folks in the office. And I think what we're interested in now is really educating and inspiring this next generation here at Modera and getting that going.
Interesting. And so I'm sort of struck by the, like, the things that work out as expected, and then the things that come along separately. So, you wanted to solve for succession, you did, and you wanted to get rid of the monkeys on your back around operations and HR and such, and you did. But then indirectly, when the monkeys came off your back, you actually ended up taking on larger leadership roles, and it turned out the firm that you rolled equity into actually grew faster than the firm that you had originally, which means it mathed better as well. Like
Right.
it turned out having a piece of their stock went even better than the stock that you had in the first place,
Yeah.
with a
How
lot more
crazy is
people
that,
contributing
right?
to it. Yeah, funny how it shifts.
Right. None of this was expected.
Right. So
Yeah.
so as you reflect back on this journey, what surprised you the most about the path of building an advisory business over the better part of a decade now that you've been doing this?
I think how much I would enjoy it, um, and be good at it. Maybe because I enjoyed it. What I enjoy the most is the deep connections I made with clients and the people that I work with.
And that was surprising. Just you didn't think the relationships would go that far?
No, no, I just thought, well, this is just going to be people's money, and they're not going to want to really show me who they really are and connect with me in that deep way. I realized early on that people have a lot of emotion around their money, and that I could be part of that. Just really helping them manage how they feel about their money, believe that they're going to be successful, and help, because of that, help make them successful and watch them thrive. I mean, what could be a more fun job than that,
Mm.
right? Seeing people transformed.
And that was different from the banking world.
Oh my gosh, yes. Um, Banking, by the time I hit it back in the late 80s, had already become very sales focused. And so when I hit commercial banking, um, we were told the days of the bankers putting their feet on their desk and the business walking in the door asking for loans are long gone. You will be pounding the pavement, you will be selling. And um, depending on what side of the bank I was working on, but particularly in corporate banking, you're just a number. You are the the interest rate that you're charging on your loan. They don't really care. as much
Mm-hmm.
about me. When I was in small business lending, I saw a little bit of that, but I couldn't connect with my clients in the same way.
Interesting. Did you realize the personal relationship dynamics were going to be that different in the financial planning world versus the banking world?
I had no idea, Michael. No idea. I never thought I'd love this work this much, or that I'd be this good at it too. I mean, it's one of those things where you have to believe in yourself. And I honestly think it was probably what I was meant to do all along. I love connecting with people and helping them. And I think this is, someday in my next chapter, I would love to influence more young women to get into this field because it is so psychology and helping based. And I think a lot of us in females are really gravitate to those kinds of fields. And we want to see people change and thrive and with our help. And that's what I enjoy so much about the work I've been doing all these years.
So as you reflect back on this journey, what was the lowest point?
Yeah, I think the lowest point was in the initial stages of this merger. I mean, I can't
The initial
paint.
stages after the merger.
Yeah, of the merger. Yeah, when we were turned off our website, turned off everything we had built, and became something different. And it was expected to be instant. And these were probably the darkest days. And these mergers are very difficult, Michael. I mean, they it's not like you just signed the paper and you immediately become this new person at a new company. And it's not like when you get hired at a new job either. We had so much work to do. All the technology, like for example, we were on Money Guide Pro. So we had to move every single client off of that platform by hand onto eMoney. It's not like that happens automatically. So we had to engage, and I had to ask people to work hard. The people that we helped us with our company, our little company, and worked and were so loyal to us, I had to ask them to feel the pain. And it was in the middle of the pandemic. So I kept asking Karen, what can we do for our people? Because I feel so badly about what we've asked of them to go through all this extra work and pain because of something that we wanted to do. So I remember having them all back in my backyard around a campfire at one point saying, just not singing Kumbaya, but just basically really having these hard conversations about how it feels and what we're going through and how we can help. Right.
So what do you know now you wish you could go back and tell you a couple of years ago to like help navigate that or make that less challenging?
Well, that it's going to be worth it. That these folks that we believe in because we like them so much, these Modera people that we picked, right, that they are going to have our backs as much as we're going to have theirs. That this, even though we call these acquisitions, we're supposed to technically call it, they're really partnerships that form. And every single person I ran into at Modera said, I want to help you. How can I do it? Tell me what I can do? And that it will get better with, working with these folks who really want to help. And eventually the pain of that merger goes away and you're all part of the team. So that's what I would tell myself in those dark days.
How long did it take before you felt like it was there, like before the pain of the merger went away?
Honestly, I feel like it took a full year to really feel like we've done this now. It's just, and honestly, part of it is I'm an old dog too. And so is Karen. Just learning all this new technology, it's not easy, right? I mean, I feel like tech just gets harder and harder. These engineers that create more bells and whistles, right? So it was challenging. The new CRM, we had pretty much everything had to be changed. So we had to really just dig in and endure that. And I remember some telling me, well, a senior person doesn't have to know e-money or get to know it. Some of the partners said to me, you really shouldn't be doing that, learning that. But I was determined, Michael, I wanted to know e-money so I understood what it could do and help as a leader with that too,
So what advice would you give to younger or even just newer advisors that could be career changing as well? Like, what advice would you give advisors coming into the industry today and trying to figure out their own path to navigate?
Well, first of all, what surprises me about this industry and with the young people who come in is how much they focus on what's in the textbook, what you got to know to help clients with the technical stuff around financial planning. But I would say to them, the important stuff that you're going to learn and need to learn isn't going to come from the textbook. In my view, seeking out people you admire and working to learn from them is the most important thing you can do. Those people who are successful in the ways that you admire, set up a call with them, figure it out, learn from them, and above all, take notes. I'm a big note taker. I use OneNote. Sometimes I use my phone to take notes, but when I hear somebody say something and the way they say it that I like, I write it down. Because communication is hard in this industry, and learning how to communicate in such a way that clients want to take your advice and they understand what you're trying to get them to do.
Wait, so you can keep like a running list of this is going to sound the wrong way, like lines to use with clients. I feel like that has a very negative connotation. Like,
I know it sounds like terrible,
good,
like scripts, right?
The good version of lines to use with clients.
I know. Well, I tell you, and this came from a Modera partner, one of these lines, which is that volatility in the market is the price we pay for the returns that we want. And I wrote that down. I wrote that down 4 years ago, and I was like, I love that. But I got to write it down and practice it. And I will say, from my own personal success, nothing's been more important than learning how to communicate well. Because if you can't communicate with your clients these concepts to get them to take your advice, then you got nothing, right? So yeah, I literally write everything down. But I also was seeking out, remember how I told you I was having all those lunches with people that I wanted to get to know. And there were a lot of people that I decided I don't want to work for that firm. But as we merge with new partners here at Modera, new people come in that I like, that I see, and I make an appointment with them and I start to work to learn from them. How did you become successful in growing your firm? What do you attribute that to? How do you talk about this? And when I hear them say stuff and I like it, I write it down every time.
So out of curiosity, are you willing to share the quote list?
Oh, wow. I've got it on so many platforms right now, but everybody,
I think everybody's looking for like just useful ways to say things and explain concepts. Would you be willing to, I don't know, even share just like a page of these that we can post for folks who are listening and just want more ideas and inspiration for themselves?
I could post a few maybe.
Okay.
That would be fun. In fact, what's fun to see now, Michael, is that people are using some of my own quotes here at the company. And one of the things I love to say to people that I work with is, I need you to dollarify that for the client. Don't just tell them they're going to save this % of tax. That doesn't mean anything to them. They want money in their pocket. Tell them how much actual money they're saving. So they always use that. Let's use Jenny's term, dollarify. She's going to want us to do that. And so it's fun to see some of the things that I've made up myself that have been working with clients and training people. And then
Right.
I learned a lot from Karen along the way, who was a master investment communicator. Um, and so I'll say, well, you all know how Karen would say this, right? And so one of the things she used to say is, you as an accumulator, somebody putting money in the market, should be wishing for a bear market, right? Imagine that,
Mm-hmm.
because you want to see something on sale.
Yep.
I mean, well, how crazy is that? So, and to watch the person's face. So, yeah, it's been fun to take these things. But what I tell people about communication is you can't just, so the first part is taking what you like and writing it down. Um, then the next part is practicing it. So you can pull it out when you need it without it seeming rehearsed or that it's not natural.
So how do you practice? Where do you practice? You can't practice on clients because it's supposed to be polished by the time you get it to the clients.
Well, maybe in those boring moments when you're sitting like waiting in line at the grocery store or the
Okay.
doctor's, just pull out your notes on your phone
Mm.
and start working at that. And, I've gotten scripts from so many places. Nick Murray is
Yep.
wonderful. He even has a book, Nick Murray's Scripts, because
Mm-hmm.
people love his scripts.
Yep.
The other master communicators, that some of the best in the business that I've run across, is dimensional.
Yep.
Right. So I tell them this every day. I wouldn't be as good as I am today if it weren't for you all helping me learn to communicate well. And they weren't always good at it, right, Michael? When I came into this industry back in 2012, they were not good at it. They were boring. And now, oh my gosh, what a difference, right?
Very cool. Very cool. If you're comfortable to share at least like an abbreviated list of, I'll call them quotable quotes. Because for folks who are listening, this is episode 387. So if you go to kitsis.com/387 in the show notes area, we'll have a short list here of at least a couple of quotable quotes, maybe to try out. Whatever Jenny, I guess whatever your favorites list is. Greatest
Yeah, and
hits.
I'm happy to share a few, but I will also encourage listeners to grow your own practice,
Yeah.
grow your own scripting. Find those people that you admire, that you listen to them and you think, oh my gosh, they've really got this, right?
Yeah. I
We have an expression around here. If you can sit down with a prospective client with just a notepad and a pencil and sell the deal, you've got this, right? But practicing that and working to hone how you say stuff is really, really important.
Yeah. I mean, I still feel like my planning communication style with clients was basically an amalgamation of about 6 or 7 different senior advisors and partners and founders that I got to work with and under over the first 4 or 5 years of my career, and just hearing all the ways that they did it with their clients. And there were a lot of people with some very different styles. And so sort of a similar version of that, I like how John says that part, but I really like how Dwight does that part. And like, I really like Ken, how explains investments in that area. And I ended out with just this blending of the versions of language that people use that kind of resonated with my style. That kid just
That's
came together at
exactly
the
right,
time.
Michael, that it can't be my way. It has to be your way,
Yeah.
and developing your own way of speaking to people by pulling the things that you like, right? That makes sense to you. But I will say it takes work. This is not something that just comes easy or by luck. It takes a lot of work and intention to get good at it.
So as we wrap up, this is a podcast about success. And just one of the themes that comes up is the word success means very different things to different people. And so, you've had this wonderful growth path of success with the business and in what grew and then ultimately got sold, or I guess rolled and merged into Modera, which has just continued forward. So the business is in a wonderful place. How do you define success for yourself at this point?
I love that question. For me personally, it's feeling like I've made a positive impact on somebody else's life. And I think I said that earlier, that that's what surprised me about this profession is how much of a difference I could make for people. And, interestingly, Michael, that became Modera's mission statement, to make a lasting and positive impact on people's lives. So I feel like I've grown with this culture and it's grown with me. And I'm just super excited about this journey and what it's become for me and for the company.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, thank you so much, Jenny, for joining us on the Financial Advisor Success Podcast.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me, Michael. It's an honor for sure.
Thank you.
Want even more ideas, tools, and resources on how to break through to the next level of success as a financial advisor? Check out the leading financial planning industry blog, Nerd's Eye View, at www.kitsis.com, where Michael covers the latest practice management trends and financial planning strategies. And by joining the members section, you can earn IMCA and CFP continuing education credits, along with exclusive member content. Get it all now at www.kitsis.com.